It was an ordinary Tuesday morning, the kind of day where nothing seemed out of the ordinary in my quiet suburban neighborhood. The sun filtered through the leaves of the towering oak trees lining the street, casting dapples of light on the manicured lawns and well-kept gardens. I had just sipped my first cup of coffee, settling into my routine when a sudden jolt of adrenaline disrupted the calm. The day had started like any other, picking up mail, checking on family updates, and glancing at home improvement projects that had been brewing in my mind for weeks. Little did I know that everything was about to change within a matter of minutes. The neighborhood felt peaceful, but as I walked by the front window, something out of place caught my eye, a pair of figures loitering near my garage. At first glance, they looked official, dressed in matching blue polo shirts adorned with a logo I didn't recognize. Intrigued but cautious, I squinted to get a better view. My heart raced as they began to approach my front door with purpose, an air of authority about them that made me instinctively wary. A myriad of thoughts swirled in my mind. Who were they? Why were they here? My instincts told me something wasn't right. I reached for my phone, contemplating whether to call authorities or simply keep an eye on them. But before I could decide, they rang the doorbell. A soft chime echoed throughout the house, sending a shiver down my spine. It felt off-color against the serene backdrop of the morning. It was not just a doorbell. This was an alarm bell ringing in my head. My gut feelings had been honed from years of living in this community and being culturally attuned to its rhythms. A series of strange occurrences had circulated among neighbors recently about unauthorized inspections and overly aggressive HOA members trying to enforce obscure regulations. None of us had taken those rumors seriously until now. With practiced reflexes, I grabbed my firearm from its secure location, a decision I never thought I would have to make. The armed security detail I hired after several unsettling incidents had proved invaluable in this moment. Their presence gave me both reassurance and a sense of empowerment. As I glanced through the peephole, I could see their body language shift. They were now pounding on the door as if demanding entry. It became clear that these weren't typical HOA representatives. They were imposters trying to assert dominance in a way that crossed both moral and legal lines. My heart raced with fury and protection instincts. Nobody enters my home uninvited. In a controlled yet tense manner, I whispered to my security personnel stationed nearby, signaling them to get ready. They understood without needing further explanation. Their experience told them everything about uninvited guests and potential threats. Just moments later, as I opened the door cautiously enough to gauge their intentions while still ensuring security protocols were in place, what unfolded next would become a story worth telling, one that balanced on the razor's edge between crime and justice in suburban life. As I stood on the precipice of confrontation, a flurry of thoughts raced through my mind, particularly about the organization that had purportedly sent these individuals. Homeowners associations, HOAs, are intended to be structures that foster community, maintain property values, and provide a blend of governance to neighborhood life. However, their power can easily evolve into something less than benevolent when misused or misconstrued. Typically, HOAs serve several essential functions: enforcing community rules, managing communal amenities, and ensuring the upkeep of landscaping and architectural standards within a neighborhood. They exist to enhance quality of life and promote harmony among residents. Fees collected from homeowners fund these services, which often include upkeep for common areas such as parks, pools, or clubhouses. But the line between enforcement and overreach can become blurred. HOAs are staffed by volunteers from the community, neighbors who take on leadership roles but may not always possess the necessary training for handling disputes or conflicts effectively. In some cases, this can lead to a heavy-handed approach to rule enforcement. I recalled hearing stories about overly aggressive HOA board members who insisted on draconian fines for minor infractions, leaving residents frustrated and bewildered. Rumors had been circulating in the community about a few unsavory tactics used by local HOA representatives, including unauthorized property inspections and intimidation tactics when homeowners failed to comply with obscure regulations. Many felt that these gatherings lacked transparency, emphasizing an air of intimidation rather than community cooperation. In this context, I was far from the only one stirred by feelings of unease. Conversations in bakeries, at school drop-off points, and during neighborhood barbecues had turned increasingly skeptical regarding the HOA's intentions. What complicated matters further was how such power may fall into the hands of individuals eager to manipulate it for personal agendas. In my case, as I prepared for confrontation with these imposters at my door, I realized any entities posing as legitimate HOA inspectors would naturally play off existing fears about compliance in suburban life. Their entry could symbolize a broader conspiracy against our rights as homeowners, an attempt to assert dominance where there should be collaboration. My mind returned to last summer when several neighbors shared disturbing accounts during a community meeting about unknown individuals forced their way into yards, citing inspections. Some claimed they had encountered pushy representatives demanding adherence to rules that nobody remembered voting on. The atmosphere of suspicion was palpable and strikingly evident even before my encounter with the fake HOA figures began. As the pounding continued at my door, the very act that began as a simple query morphed into an aggressive demand. I caught myself wondering just how many others in my neighborhood faced similar situations without the security measures in place that I had come to rely on. My rapport with those around me began to feel endangered. Was our community really as safe and tightly knit as we thought? With every moment that passed, it became clear that more than just authority was being questioned. It was community trust itself hanging in the balance. As I steadied myself for the confrontation, I took a closer look at the intruders standing at my door. The two figures wore dark blue polo shirts emblazoned with a logo that seemed vaguely official yet unfamiliar. Their attire wasn't typical of the HOA representatives I had encountered before. There was an unsettling quality to their polished appearance, as though they were striving to project authority well beyond their genuine credentials. The first man appeared to be in his late 30s, with a confident stance that suggested he was used to being in control. His hair was slicked back neatly, and he sported a thin mustache that curled slightly at the ends. There was something almost rehearsed about his demeanor, an artificial charm designed to disarm any skepticism. His partner, a slightly younger woman with sharp features and piercing eyes, stood beside him with a posture that radiated confidence and intimidation. She scanned the property as if assessing its vulnerabilities, her gaze flickering between the door and the nearby windows. I couldn't ignore the way they seemed both rehearsed and confrontational at once. It was almost as if they were playing roles in a drama scripted by someone who understood how to instill fear but lacked insight into genuine community engagement. As they knocked again with increasing urgency, I noticed the slight twitch in the man's brow, betraying an impatience that suggested a hidden agenda. Their body language was particularly telling. While one maintained eye contact with me, a tactic likely intended to establish dominance, the other would occasionally glance over her shoulder as if expecting backup. It struck me that they might not be working alone. Perhaps this was part of a larger operation aimed at unsettling homeowners. When they finally introduced themselves, claiming to represent the HOA, it felt less like an invitation for dialogue and more like a demand for compliance. The words flowed smoothly from their lips, yet there was an underlying thread of menace woven into their tone that instantly raised red flags. They spoke of urgent inspections and necessary compliance checks, but their urgency felt forced, like a performance meant to intimidate rather than inform. An unsettling thought crossed my mind. These two could easily manipulate eager homeowners into compliance or submission through sheer force of presence. Were they out to exploit our community's fear of HOA repercussions? It became evident they were not genuinely interested in promoting community standards. Rather, they aimed to assert control through a facade of authority. As I prepared myself for what lay ahead, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was staring into the eyes of wolves disguised in sheep's clothing. This wasn't just about unauthorized entry. It was about implications far darker, about how vulnerable we might become if we allowed our fears of authority to override our instincts. Every moment stretched as I processed their appearance and demeanor. I remembered whispers from neighbors about strange occurrences involving fake inspectors and aggressive tactics used to enforce obscure rules. These two stood as embodiments of those fears, ready to breach my home under the guise of HOA oversight, taking advantage of our trust for whatever ulterior motive they might harbor. With my security detail ready and my resolve solidified, I knew I had to confront them, not just for my safety, but for all who shared this space we called home. As I braced myself for the impending confrontation, my mind focused sharply on the security measures I had put in place after a series of unsettling incidents in the neighborhood. The decision to invest in armed security wasn't made lightly. It stemmed from a growing sense of vulnerability and an urgent need for protection against potential threats. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of reassurance knowing that these precautions were about to be tested. The first line of defense was my security team, composed of highly trained professionals who understood the nuances of residential safety. They had been briefed on the peculiarities of our community, including the rumors swirling about rogue inspectors and aggressive HOA representatives. Their presence had become a constant in my home life, silently monitoring the area and ensuring we remained vigilant against unwelcome intrusions. As I glanced toward the small earpiece worn by one of my security personnel, I recalled how they had swiftly assessed our property's vulnerabilities during their first visit. They had installed high-definition cameras at strategic points around the house, each lens carefully positioned to cover blind spots and ensure that nothing went unnoticed. These cameras not only served as a deterrent but also provided real-time surveillance feeds that I could access from my phone, allowing me to stay connected even when I was away. Equipped with advanced technology, my security detail had set up motion sensors that triggered alerts whenever someone approached the home. This feature made me acutely aware of activity outside, adding an extra layer of vigilance that proved invaluable in maintaining peace of mind. On that day, as I prepared to confront the fake HOA figures at my door, I felt grateful for having taken those precautionary steps. Moreover, I had invested in reinforced entryways. My front door was solid wood with a heavy-duty deadbolt and 3-inch screws anchoring the hinges. These were not mere aesthetic choices. They were deliberate enhancements designed to withstand forceful attempts at entry. As I stood there, ready to face whatever lay behind that door, I took solace in knowing that my home was fortified against unauthorized access. The most critical part of my security strategy was undoubtedly the option to engage with armed professionals if necessary. My security team consisted of individuals trained not just in physical defense but also in de-escalation techniques, a balance that provided an effective response framework for various scenarios. They understood my rights as a homeowner and were prepared to act decisively should anyone overstep boundaries. With every knock reverberating through the hallway, I whispered instructions to my security personnel stationed strategically within earshot. Their expressions mirrored mine, a mix of focused determination and readiness for whatever came next. The air was taut with anticipation as we communicated silently through nods and subtle gestures. In this charged atmosphere, it became evident that the combination of technology, trained professionals, and proactive planning would be essential in confronting these imposters. My resolve strengthened. I knew this wasn't just about defending my home. It was about standing up against intimidation tactics that sought to undermine our community's safety and trust. As I mentally prepared myself for what lay ahead, I felt empowered by these measures, transforming fear into a steadfast commitment to protect not only myself but also my neighbors from unwarranted intrusions masked as authority. With my heart pounding in my chest, I took a deep breath and steeled myself for the confrontation that lay ahead. The sound of persistent knocking on the door echoed through the hallway, each thud amplifying the tension in the air. I exchanged a quick glance with my armed security personnel, who nodded in silent agreement, their eyes reflecting a shared determination to address the situation head-on. As I opened the door just enough to see their faces clearly, I was struck immediately by their expressions, one of confidence mixed with an unsettling arrogance. The man stepped forward slightly, blocking any further view of his companion, and launched into a rehearsed introduction claiming they needed to conduct an urgent inspection on behalf of the HOA. His voice was smooth, but underlying it was an unmistakable tone of intimidation. "Good morning," he began, flashing a disarming smile that felt more like a threat than an invitation. "We're here to ensure compliance with some community guidelines. We need access to your property immediately." I felt a surge of indignation at his presumption. "And what gives you the right to enter my home without notice or proper identification?" I replied sharply, keeping my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The woman beside him shifted her weight, her sharp features tightening as she observed my response. "This is not a request," she interjected coolly. "We are authorized representatives of the HOA, and we need to verify compliance issues regarding your property." Her words dripped with condescension, as if she expected me to cower under their self-asserted authority. At that moment, every story I had heard from neighbors about similar encounters rushed back to me. The intimidation tactics employed by rogue inspectors masquerading as legitimate authority figures. I realized this was not just about my home. It was about standing firm against an insidious threat that could endanger our entire community's sense of safety and trust. Before I could respond further, my security personnel moved closer behind me, their presence commanding attention without uttering a word. They understood the delicate balance between de-escalation and confrontation. It was time to assert control over the situation. "Excuse me," one of them said calmly yet firmly, stepping slightly into view as he addressed the intruders. "Please provide your identification and verification of your authority to conduct this inspection." The man's demeanor shifted instantly. His initial confidence wavered as he realized we weren't likely to comply without proof of legitimacy. The air thickened with tension as he hesitated, glancing sideways at his partner for support, though she seemed equally caught off guard. "Look," she said defensively, "we don't have time for this. We need access right now." "No," I countered resolutely, feeling empowered by the backing of my security team. "You will not enter this property without proper identification or a warrant." In that moment, I could see their facade beginning to crack under pressure. They were no longer in control. The urgency they had exuded moments earlier turned into frustration as they exchanged glances filled with uncertainty, an acknowledgement that their ruse might be unraveling before them. As they fumbled for excuses and explanations that seemed increasingly desperate and unconvincing, I felt buoyed by a sense of victory, not just for myself, but for every homeowner who had faced similar intimidation unprepared. The balance of power had shifted back into our hands. These imposters were not going to breach our sanctuary today. Realizing they were outmatched both psychologically and in resolve, they finally stepped back from the doorway and mumbled something about needing to reassess their approach. As they retreated down the path leading away from my home, relief washed over me, but tempered with an acute awareness that vigilance would always be necessary in safeguarding both myself and my community against threats disguised as authority. Following the tense confrontation with the imposters, the reality of the situation began to settle in, and I couldn't help but ponder the legal implications of what had just transpired. The audacity of those two individuals in attempting to gain forced entry into my home without any proper identification or warrant was not only alarming, but also deeply troubling from a legal standpoint. First and foremost, it became clear that they had no legitimate authority to conduct the so-called inspection. In most jurisdictions, homeowners have specific rights that protect them from unwarranted intrusions by anyone claiming to be an authority figure. Without a warrant or probable cause, these imposters had crossed a line that could have serious legal ramifications for them, if only they knew how closely they were flirting with criminal offenses. My thoughts turned to the concept of trespassing. In legal terms, unauthorized entry into someone's property is considered a violation of personal space and privacy. Given their aggressive tactics and refusal to provide adequate identification, these individuals could face charges related to trespassing or even harassment. This realization bolstered my confidence, as I understood that the law was on my side in protecting my home and family against unlawful actions. Moreover, I recalled discussions with neighbors about our rights as homeowners concerning homeowners associations. While HOAs do have some powers to enforce community standards and guidelines, their authority is not absolute. They cannot bypass legal protocols or engage in intimidation tactics to extract compliance from residents. If formal complaints arose from this incident, I recognized I could potentially pursue legal action against those impersonating HOA representatives, citing fraud and misrepresentation. Additionally, the potential for civil lawsuits loomed large. Should any harm come to me or my property due to their actions, either physical damage during an attempted forced entry or emotional distress from the intimidation, I could seek redress through legal means. This thought gave me further reassurance. Knowing there were pathways for accountability offered me a sense of control in an otherwise chaotic situation. However, I was acutely aware that pursuing legal action would require diligence and documentation. Any evidence gathered by my security team, such as video footage capturing their approach and behavior, will be invaluable should I decide to report this incident to local authorities. The presence of trained security personnel not only deterred immediate threats, but also helped establish a clear narrative that I could leverage to protect myself legally. As I reflected on these legal considerations, it became evident that communities must remain vigilant against any form of illegitimate authority attempting to overstep boundaries. Educating fellow homeowners about their rights and the limits of HOA powers was essential in promoting unity and resilience against such encounters, fostering an empowered neighborhood willing to stand against intimidation. In the wake of this confrontation, I felt compelled to share my experience with neighbors and advocate for collective awareness regarding homeowners' rights. Together, we could create a community that emphasizes vigilance and cooperation while ensuring that those in power operate within established legal frameworks. Ultimately, this incident underscored a critical truth. Awareness of our rights, combined with proactive measures like armed security and community solidarity, can safeguard us against both physical threats and violations of our peace of mind, all while holding those who overstep accountable for their actions. In the days following the confrontation with the fake HOA representatives, the community buzzed with a mix of concern, curiosity, and outrage. Word spread quickly, fueled by the anxiety that had been building among homeowners regarding the legitimacy of authority figures in our neighborhood. It seemed as though every conversation at the local cafe or school pickup was punctuated by discussions about my experience, as residents grappled with their sense of safety and trust. Neighbors began to gather on porches and in backyards, exchanging stories about their own unsettling encounters with individuals claiming to represent various organizations. This collective unease morphed into a determination to take action. The community was not just reacting to my situation. They were awakening to the reality that their vigilance was essential in safeguarding their homes and families against potential threats. At a nearby park, a spontaneous meeting took place where concerned residents came together to discuss how best to respond to this alarming incident. I was invited to share my experience, an opportunity that felt both empowering and necessary. As I recounted the events, I could see the expressions on my neighbors' faces shift from anxiety to resolve. They were hungry for solutions and clarity. During the meeting, we discussed the importance of understanding our rights as homeowners and the limitations of HOA powers. Many were surprised to learn that imposters could face legal ramifications for trying to coerce entry without proper identification or warrants. This newfound knowledge galvanized us into forming an informal neighborhood watch group, emphasizing communication and shared responsibility. We created a closed social media group where residents could post updates about suspicious activity, share tips on home security, and educate each other on legal rights concerning property ownership. The atmosphere shifted from fear to solidarity as we realized that by banding together, we could foster a sense of empowerment rather than vulnerability. Support for my experience came in various forms. Neighbors expressed gratitude for my willingness to stand firm and confront the imposters. Some went so far as to say my actions inspire them to be bolder in asserting their rights when faced with unwarranted intrusions. This ripple effect of confidence spread throughout the community, transforming passive concerns into proactive measures. Local law enforcement also took notice of our newfound vigilance. Officers attended our next neighborhood meeting, offering advice on how to handle similar situations in the future and urging residents to report any suspicious behavior immediately. They reiterated the importance of maintaining open lines of communication between law enforcement and the community, and their presence bolstered our collective sense of security. As we continued these discussions and established our watch group, it became clear that our community was evolving into one characterized by resilience. No longer would we allow fear or intimidation tactics from imposters to dictate our experiences. Instead, we would stand united in protection of our homes and each other. In that transformative period, it became evident that we were more than just neighbors. We were allies committed to safeguarding our collective well-being. The confrontation had sparked something much larger than I could have anticipated, an awakening that encouraged awareness, community engagement, and solidarity against any form of illegitimate authority that dared to intrude upon our lives. Together, we promised each other we would remain vigilant, empowered by knowledge, and united in purpose. In the weeks following the confrontation, the atmosphere in the community shifted significantly. The initial shock and anxiety gradually morphed into a sense of empowerment and collective vigilance. Residents who once hesitated to question authority began to engage in conversations about neighborhood safety and their rights as homeowners. It was a palpable change, one that seemed to rejuvenate our sense of community. During our weekly neighborhood watch meetings, attendance soared. More and more residents showed up, eager to contribute and learn about strategies for maintaining safety. We established clear communication channels through our social media group, allowing for rapid sharing of information regarding any suspicious activities or potential threats. The once muted voices of concerned citizens were now united in a chorus of awareness and commitment. In light of the recent events, I felt compelled to reach out to the local police department, requesting a community safety workshop. To my amazement, they responded enthusiastically, offering resources and expertise on how to respond to suspicious encounters. Officers came to speak at one of our meetings, sharing not only legal information but also practical advice on self-defense and emergency preparedness. Their presence instilled a greater sense of security within the community. As discussions evolved, we also explored ways to strengthen our ties with the homeowners association. Many residents expressed frustration over the HOA's previous intimidation tactics. Yet we realized that understanding how to communicate effectively with them could empower us further. We arranged for representatives from the HOA board to attend one of our neighborhood meetings. This meeting was not only about airing grievances, but about fostering constructive dialogue. When the day arrived, I could feel tensions in the air. Residents were eager yet apprehensive, unsure how the HOA representatives would respond to our united front. As the board members took their seats, I noticed the cautious demeanor of my neighbors transform into confidence as we presented our concerns collectively. We shared experiences, emphasizing the need for transparency and respect for homeowners' rights. To my surprise, the HOA representatives listened attentively. Perhaps it was the sheer number of residents present or the resolve displayed in our messages that compelled them to acknowledge our concerns genuinely. They expressed regret over how some situations had been handled previously and agreed to establish better communication channels moving forward. A newfound willingness to collaborate emerged, with both sides recognizing that working together was crucial for maintaining a safe and pleasant community. In the aftermath of these discussions, we created a joint committee comprising both residents and HOA representatives tasked with addressing community concerns proactively. This collaborative effort aimed to prevent misunderstandings and ensure that all voices were heard in future decisions affecting neighborhood policies and practices. Reflecting on this transformative journey, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for what had transpired since the confrontation. It had catalyzed a movement toward greater awareness, unity, and resilience within our community. What began as a frightening experience with imposters at my door had ultimately sparked vital conversations about safety, trust, and proactive engagement among neighbors. I knew that vigilance would always be necessary, both against external threats and internal miscommunication, but with this newfound solidarity, I felt confident we could face whatever challenges lay ahead together. The incident had forged not just a watch group, but an empowered community ready to stand firm against any individuals who might attempt to undermine our trust and safety in the future. Reflecting on the entire experience, I realized that several key lessons emerged from the confrontation with the imposters claiming to represent the HOA. This incident had not only tested my resolve, but also opened my eyes to the intricacies of community dynamics and personal safety. First and foremost, the importance of awareness cannot be overstated. It became clear that many homeowners, including myself, often take for granted the safety we feel within our neighborhoods. This false sense of security can lead to dangerous situations where individuals may exploit weaknesses or naivety. Educating ourselves about our rights as homeowners and being vigilant concerning our surroundings has proven paramount in defending against unauthorized intrusions. Awareness is not simply knowledge. It is a call to action that ensures we stay informed and ready to respond if necessary. Another vital lesson was the significance of community engagement. The event brought residents together, uniting us with a common purpose to protect our homes and each other. Solidarity proved instrumental in creating an empowered neighborhood, one where individuals felt connected and capable of standing up for their rights. The establishment of a neighborhood watch group was a direct response that highlighted how proactive collaboration yields positive outcomes. By sharing experiences and advice, we were enabling resilience against potential threats. Communication emerged as a critical component throughout this journey. Whether addressing concerns with local law enforcement or voicing frustrations with HOA representatives, direct communication allowed us to set expectations and foster relationships built on transparency. This reinforced my belief in open dialogue as a powerful tool for both conflict resolution and community building. Having platforms for discussion, be they social media groups or town hall meetings, provided spaces for residents to express concerns freely and seek support. Moreover, I recognize the value of preparedness. My decision to implement security measures prior to the confrontation had proven invaluable, not only in protecting my home, but in equipping me with the confidence necessary to face adversity when it appeared at my doorstep. Taking preventative action instilled reassurance. I learned that investing in personal safety pays dividends not just one-on-one, but for entire communities grappling with similar challenges. This experience also created an awareness around the limits of authority figures, including homeowners associations themselves. We must remind ourselves that while such organizations exist for oversight, they are ultimately accountable to the very people they serve. Understanding one's rights in relation to real property laws enabled us to assert our positions firmly without undue intimidation from perceived authorities. Finally, perhaps one of the most resonant lessons was about empowerment, the ability we each hold within ourselves and as a collective body to influence change positively. After confronting those imposters, every homeowner who participated felt invigorated and emboldened, sparking waves of change across our neighborhood's culture. Rather than allowing fear to dictate our responses, we resolved together to create an environment built on mutual respect and vigilance against any form of encroachment on our dignities or rights. As I continued reflecting on these lessons learned amidst discussions within our neighborhood watch group, I felt invigorated by the knowledge that together, we could face whatever challenges might come our way in unison, not simply enduring adversities but growing stronger through them as resilient caretakers of our own community's safety and integrity. As I reflect on the events that transpired, I am struck by how one alarming incident catalyzed profound changes within our community. What began as a moment filled with fear and uncertainty transformed into a powerful lesson in vigilance, solidarity, and empowerment. This experience is a reminder of the importance of being prepared and aware, not just as individuals, but as a collective group dedicated to the safety of our homes. In the face of adversity, we discovered our strength. The initial shock of encountering imposters at my door quickly shifted to a realization of the urgency for action. It reinforced the notion that we must not rely solely on others, be it local authorities or organizations for protection, but take responsibility for our own safety and well-being. By uniting as a community, we were able to foster a sense of security that transcended individual apprehensions. The establishment of our neighborhood watch group is perhaps one of the most significant outcomes of this experience. It symbolizes our commitment to watch over one another and actively participate in safeguarding our homes against any threats that may arise. The growth and participation at meetings and workshops has invigorated conversations about safety, rights, and responsibilities among residents. As we collectively engage in these discussions, we're not only educating ourselves, but also reinforcing the bonds that connect us, reminding us that we're all in this together. One crucial lesson learned was that authority must never be taken for granted, especially when it comes in a guise that appears legitimate. We recognize that organizations designed for oversight, such as HOAs, can have their accountability compromised. This awareness allowed us to engage them constructively, ensuring that their primary focus remained on serving the needs of residents rather than imposing unwarranted intimidation. Throughout this journey, I found myself reflecting on the importance of open communication. By fostering an environment where residents feel comfortable voicing their concerns and sharing their experiences, we are cultivating trust within our community. These dialogues not only demystify issues, but also allow us to collaboratively brainstorm solutions, whether it be improving communication with the HOA or implementing additional safety measures. Looking back, I'm also reminded of how vital it is to empower others to act. Sharing my experience prompted neighbors to reevaluate their own approaches to safety, encouraging them to take decisive action if confronted with similar circumstances. Empowerment breeds confidence and resilience, qualities essential for standing firm against those who might try to exploit vulnerabilities. As our community continues to grow stronger through these lessons, I feel inspired by the solidarity we've cultivated. Our determination to protect one another fosters a culture where fear is replaced with vigilance, a neighborhood where every resident feels equipped to respond to potential threats with confidence. In closing, while the threat posed by those imposters was very real, so too was the opportunity for growth and transformation it presented. We have emerged from this experience more connected and resilient than ever. My hope is that we continue to nurture this spirit of togetherness, remaining vigilant while upholding one another's rights and dignity. Together, we will navigate any challenges ahead with courage and unity, ensuring our community remains a safe haven for all.